Hello everyone, this is Pat Traymore bringing you another episode of Footnotes. We continue with the story of Vernon and Irene Castle. In the last episode, we discussed the opening of Castle House. We continue our story in 1914. The Castles made their first instructional tape when movie cameras were brought to Castle House. The film was accompanied by a book entitled Modern Dancing. The book was a hard-covered instructional manual that covered many of their dancing steps. The book depicted many dances, which includes the castle walk, the hesitation waltz, the machich, and the tango. Many dancers know this as the famous Blue Book, which serves as a foundation for the syllabus we use today in dancing. With their book being a huge success, the Castles then departed on a nationwide tour. They traveled from coast to coast, which was called the Whirlwind Publicity Tour. Years later, this whirlwind tour would be depicted. In this depiction, Astaire and Rogers portrayed the Castles by dancing on a huge map of the United States of America. After the tour, the Castles opened their second dancing school, which was on Coney Island. This school was called Castles by the Sea, which opened in Luna Park. Castles by the Sea included a large dance floor overlooking the ocean. Following the success of Castles by the Sea, Vernon and Irene sailed back to Europe. They sailed on the ship SS Imperator, which held the title of the largest ship in the world after the sinking of the Titanic. As they sailed back to Europe on this beautiful German ship, they read some alarming news in the paper. The news broke of the assassination of the Archduke Ferdinand in Sarajevo. As the Castles performed in Paris, governments were rattling with sounds of war. With the outbreak of World War I, it was difficult for the Castles to return home. They sailed home on the RMS Olympic, where they staged a dance on board. They hosted their show in the Parisian cafe for which the RMS Olympic was famous for. Once home, the Castles began touring in vaudeville. They traveled by train and often with a collection of pets and animals, including dogs, cats, and a monkey. Irene was an animal lover, and she often rescued animals as they traveled. Between touring and Broadway shows, the Castles' ambition, their great ambition, was a story of their life. They created a biographical film, which they called The World of Life. A copy of this film survives today in the New York Public Library. It's hard to name just one crowning achievement of Vernon and Irene Castle. Their success could have lasted longer if not for the drumbeat of war. After they returned from Europe, the thought of war remained on Vernon's mind. At the height of their success, Vernon decided to join the British Aviation Corps. In the early days of powered flight, it was a dangerous decision to make. Irene did her best to support Vernon's decision. Irene volunteered to fly in an airplane with Vernon to show her support. Vernon's decision must have been heartbreaking for Irene because it ended their famous career. Before Vernon left for Europe, Irene hosted a farewell dance at Madison Square Garden. Irene did her part for publicity by wearing a Flying Corps uniform. Vernon saw action in Europe and received several injuries. Meanwhile, Irene started working as an actress in silent movies. Most notably, Irene appeared in a film called Patricia. It was a silent film. In Patricia, Irene appeared as a solo actress, not a partnered dancer. As the war lingered on, Vernon was sent back to the United States as an instructor because Vernon was injured. In the state of Texas, Vernon was assigned the title of flight instructor. In Europe, Vernon was in many plane crashes, but was very lucky he survived them all. However, in 1917, Vernon heroically lost his life by trying to save another pilot. He was involved in a forced crash landing, after which he never regained consciousness and he died in the field hospital. He was just 30 years old, one of the greatest dancers that ever lived. We shall continue our story in the next chapter of Footnotes.